Cleveland Golf. When you hear that name, you probably think of wedges. Meow. I got my hands on this guy. It's Cleveland Golf's original old school wedge training booklet that they used to train a lot of their players. There's some really good stuff in here that I want to talk about in today's video. Wedge training, wedge systems from Cleveland Golf. Let's do it right meow. Thank you very much for tuning in to my YouTube channel. My name is Kenny. Some of you may know me as Kennie Kat. I am a competitive golfer, and this channel is dedicated to my journey on what it takes to become a better competitive golfer. All right, let's jump straight into it. I got a really good friend of mine named Charlie. He used to be a mini tour player, and I do play a lot of golf with him to practice and get better. I think it's always important to play with better golfers, and he's constantly kicking my butt up and down the course. And I absolutely hate gambling against him because I ultimately just end up losing my money. And man, do I hate losing money. One of the things that I've noticed about Charlie and admire about him is his wedge play is phenomenal. From inside of 110 yards to pretty much up to the green, there aren't many shots that he misses, and he always finds ways to get the ball close to the hole. So we were playing a couple weeks ago, and he bestowed this little guy on me. So this is an original Cleveland Strixon wedge training manual that was done by Terry Dill. Terry Dill was a professional golf player that taught my friend's coach, and I think Terry Dill won the Masters par 3s. And there was some really good stuff in here, and it started to make sense on why Charlie is so darn good with his wedges. You guys down that lens told me that you love when I do practice drills and videos, so I'm gonna give the people what they want. So there's three main situations that this book covers, and today we're gonna talk about situations 1 and 2. So the first situation is, what do you do when you're 19 yards or so around from the green? Just a simple chip and run or pitch and run, and he goes over a lot of fundamental stuff that you've probably heard. I'm actually just gonna like copy and paste and put that right on the screen. There's one thing that stood out to me, and that one is the right toe pointed in. I'm gonna show you why. There's two things that you have to do if you're gonna be a great chipper or a great short game player. The first one is you have to be able to control strike and low point very well. Typically, in a full shot for me, I'm a person that loves to sway off the ball and generate a little bit more power, and it's not too big of a deal if you sway off of the target because you're doing a full swing motion. You still have a lot of time to get your body back on top of the ball and get that low point ahead of it. But with a chip or any kind of like short wedge shot, you're obviously working with a much shorter swing. There's not a lot of time to get that low point moving off of the ball and then coming back to it. So in his guide, he talks about keeping that right toe just pointed inward, and essentially what that does is that locks the hip and prevents you from swaying. Just taking that right toe a little bit and just, ever so slightly pointing it towards the ball when you set up to it, you're typically just gonna wanna rotate on top of the ball and obviously keep that strike at the ball or just in front of the ball, which is what you're gonna need to control your low point as you're chipping and pitching. And for most of these, the guides are pretty straightforward. I mean, just a lot of really good basic and good information that you should follow. In fact, I actually use this a lot with my 8-iron, 9-iron, and I'll even grab the club like a putter and simply just stick the toe in the ground, follow the exact same fundamentals, and just hit the ball like a putting stroke, just to get it out to the green. We're gonna move on to situation 2, where he talks about greenside bunker shots and flop shots, which are essentially the same shot. I have another video coming about greenside bunker, so I'm not gonna get into that today, but I'm just gonna touch briefly on flop shots. If I were to write a guide for amateurs that are learning how to play flop shots, it would literally be like situation number 2 on the page. Here's how to play a flop shot. And then you would flip to the next page and there'd be big bold letters that just say, don't play a flop shot.
Oh, not enough, and here it comes.
I think he was.
Area, give himself some time to recover and reset.
It's a 7 in the book.
It's a perfect example for why you shouldn't play flop shots. That was brutal. Real quickly, I just want to interject here. If you are new to the channel, please do consider hitting that subscribe button below. I would greatly appreciate it, and the best compliment you can pay me is a thumbs up. So situation 3, we cover 20 to 60 yards from your landing point. And he has a guide here that wants you to develop 4 feels for different yardages. And it kind of makes a lot of sense. So with the lob wedge, he's saying that develop a feel for a 20-yard shot, and then you move over to your sand wedge, and that same feel should give you a 23-yard shot, and then you go over to your gap wedge, and that same feel should give you a 27-yard shot. Then what he's saying is go to a second feel with your lob wedge that gives you a 30-yard shot, and that same feel should give you 33 yards with your sand wedge, and then 37 yards with your gap wedge. And this goes on and on all the way up to basically 60 yards. And this kind of got me thinking, this is very similar to the other wedge video I did about proprioception, where I use my knees, my waist, and my shoulders to have certain distances, and it's basically the same exact setup. He's just starting with the distances first, as opposed to starting with your natural distance. So, of course, I had time to go to the range to practice this, and I was working on some of these drills. And I have some good video of that earlier, so we're gonna take a look at what I was doing. So what I did was I dropped 3 or 4 balls at a 20-yard target range, and I was hitting onto a green. I was getting a feel with my lob wedge and my sand wedge. I was not practicing with my gap wedge today. And basically just getting the feel of hitting a 20-yard shot with my lob wedge, which for me feels about where my knees are, and then having that same feeling with the sand wedge. And exactly as the guy was saying, it was going about 3 to 4 yards longer. I never actually thought about just having that shot go 3 to 4 yards longer. I've always tried to hit the 20-yard shot with the same feel with different clubs, but his guide makes a lot more sense. If I need to hit a 20-yard shot, then I could just use my lob wedge, but if I need to hit like a 24-yard shot, then I would just use my sand wedge, and I don't have to change anything other than the feel. I thought that was pretty cool. And then I worked my way back to the 40-yard distance and started hitting some of those shots, which for me felt like about waist high with my lob wedge. And with my sand wedge, 40 yards or so felt about, you know, just a little bit above waist high, just about waist high, hitting it with those distances. But again, the guide rang true. Pretty much the distances that he was talking about in the guide were exactly what I was experiencing, and it was going about the distances that I would expect those clubs to go. And then I went all the way back to my 50-yard shots with my lob wedge, which feels almost like a shot that comes all the way up to just above waist high. It's almost shoulder high with a lob wedge. And then hitting 55 to 56-yard shots with the sand wedge, the exact same way. And that brings me to my second thing that you have to do in order to be a good short game, good wedge player. Not only do you have to control strike and low point, you have to make sure you have a smooth tempo. You have to be able to control the speed of the club. Because if you got jerky, erratic movements, you're never going to be able to hit the club at the same speed and send the ball at the same distance. And in this guide, he talks about one simple thing, that the left arm is the engine. And I finally understood what he meant by that, because it's something that I've always done, but I haven't been able to articulate it. Let me show you. Hey Max, would you mind moving for me, buddy? I'm trying to do a YouTube video. Please. Come on. Come on. I know. It's fun laying on my stuff, but I'm trying to do a YouTube video. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Love you very much, sir. If I do left arm chips, a couple of things happen. When I take the club back, because my left arm is raising up, my left shoulder's going down, it causes me to naturally have a tendency to want to lean more towards the target, which is going to typically make me feel like I might catch it a little thin, or I might get or I might hit the ground just at the ball. Which, if I'm going to catch it thin, that's okay, because it's still going to have some spin, and it's probably still going to go somewhere about the distance that we want it to go. But the second thing that makes the most sense about his left arm is driving the ball is when I bring the club back with my left hand and I follow through, my tendency isn't to close the face. My tendency is actually to keep loft on the face and keep the face open, which, if you're going to be hitting a finesse wedge shot, having a loft is going to increase more spin, so it's going to get the ball going higher, and it's going to get the ball stopping sooner. So ultimately, when I use my left hand as the driving force for controlling my speed, it helps my tempo, it helps my strike, and it helps my weight transfer to the left side. And the tendency is going to be to catch it a little thin, which, if I'm going to hit a bad wedge shot, thin is okay.
Overall, do motions quite solid. Some of the things that I think we can clean up here is the takeaway. We don't see a lot of body rotation, just a lot of lift with the arms. So it's a lot of arms going up, not much going on with the body, but decent pivot on the way through, keeping the club a little bit more passive. So some really nice things going on. I think there's some things we can clean up and make it a little bit more simplistic when it comes into pressure for you, but overall, not bad. Again, I just think it's a little bit more pick up with the arms instead of turning with the shoulders. Let's take a look at the face-on view here. So again, not bad overall. Good motion coming through. A lot of good things, club twirl on point. But some of the things I like to see as we look at the shoulders, as we go back, I like to see this shoulder get a little steeper on the backswing so your head can get more ahead of the ball, and that way you can maintain the ankles just a touch bit more. But overall, from a finesse sequence standpoint, it looks really, really good. Seeing that the club and the arms are going first and the body coming a little bit through later. So a lot of good things going on here. Keep it up.
I hope you all found this video informative. I think this guy was super helpful. I'm glad that Charlie shared with me, and I'm happy to share it with you. And we will definitely be covering this in more depth because I do love short game stuff, really do. Is there anything specific that you work on to help better control your wedge game? Are there any tips and tricks that you want to share? Put that in the comment section below. I want to hear from you all down that lens. That's really all I got for you people. As always, thank you very much for watching my video. Deuces, people. Let's keep it moving.